Welcome all of you to this webinar, and we've called this webinar New Productivity Principles for Leaders. And I gave it a thought about why I named this webinar New Productivity Principles for Leaders. And I'll get to that a bit, but before that, we'll do a quick introduction. I see so many familiar faces here, so I don't feel like going into any long introduction, but a quick one. I am the co-founder of Calm Achiever. I co-founded it with my brother, Vakil, who's also here. I am a GTD coach and a master trainer. I've been practicing GTD, I think, since 2007, 2008, and Arif introduced it to me. And it began as a journey with practicing it myself, then introducing it to my team, and then eventually in 2015, we founded Calm Achiever to really share this methodology with others, especially in India. And I am joined by none other than David Allen. And all of you, I think, know David Allen. Doesn't really need an introduction, but I should do one in case some of you are new here. He is the founder and the chairman of the David Allen Company. Forbes has called him one of the top 5 executive coaches in the world. Fast Company has called him one of the most influential thinkers. He's one of the foremost experts on personal productivity. His book, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, is a New York Times bestseller and has sold millions of copies. So I'm really honored to have David. David, if you can just come in and say hi and just share what's happening in your world.
Thanks, Ali. Delighted to be here. My wife and I live in Amsterdam. We moved from Santa Barbara, California almost 7 years ago. And we love it here in Amsterdam. And this is much more the center of my world. A lot of my work in the last 2 or 3 years has been supporting our licensee network, the distribution channels for coaching and training of the methodology. So I'm still a practitioner of the methodology. I fall off the wagon just like everybody else. And I just have no excuses because I know how to get back on. And that's me. It's me and Catherine, my wife, and our little small dog. Our company has pretty much shrunk itself to, essentially five of us, simply because as we've built our partnership and licensee network around the world, we did not need to maintain the overhead of doing coaching and training ourselves. So we certify the master trainers around the world. And that's not a mail order event. It's Mohammed can tell you, it's pretty rigorous stuff. So it's a great network of people that we work with. And I'm absolutely delighted to be part of that.
All right, great. Thank you. We're delighted to have you as well. Now, a bit about the topic of this webinar, New Productivity Principles for Leaders. The idea of this webinar came about when I was taking clients through our virtual coaching program. And most of them are very senior leaders. They're usually business owners, entrepreneurs, or very senior executives. And they usually come up with this, a common concern. It's usually around, I'm overwhelmed with too much to do. Things are changing so fast. How do I balance my personal and professional life? How do I stay up to date with the change? How do I achieve my goals faster? And while GTD addresses all of these really well, over time, as people go through the practice of GTD, they realize it's actually much more. You can easily explain what is GTD through the 5 steps, but just through the practice, you realize it is much more deeper. In my own journey, I've been practicing it for 13 years now, and I realized that my biggest breakthroughs in this methodology came is getting those insights about what GTD is really about. On the surface, it says getting things done, stress-free productivity, but really it's much more deeper. And my breakthroughs came is when I got those insights. This is what it really is, right? It says about productivity, but it really helps you to redefine productivity. And once you get this new lens, this new way of looking at your work, it opens up a whole lot of opportunities in how you engage with your work. In this webinar, my goal for those of you who are practitioners, because I see a whole lot of practitioners here, that both me and David will be sharing insights from this methodology, some deeper insights which you get after a lot of practice, that if you start looking at your GTD system or your work through that lens, it will open up new options in terms of what you could do with your GTD system. And those of you who are new to GTD, maybe this is the first time you're consuming any sort of content around GTD. This is really an invitation to redefine what productivity means for you. and really an opportunity to explore if you adopt GTD, what it can really do for you. It's beyond the typical productivity advice that you see online. Yeah, this really is an invitation for you to get a new lens to look at how to engage with this new world that we are living in. And hopefully with that new lens, it really not just helps you achieve your goals, but really much more in life. So I'm going to be sharing with you I would say some quotes through some images about what we sometimes think productivity is about, or sometimes what we think GTD is about, but also helping you reframe to what it really is. And David also shared his insights. So the first one is GTD is not about time management. It's about managing your attention. And I often hear this from clients and people in workshops that, or when they come to us, they're like, I'm coming here because I want to be better at time management. I want to get better at managing my time, or I need more time. But really, it's not about time management. It's really the focus of GTD is something else. It's more around managing your focus and attention. And yeah, I want to hear, David, your thoughts on this GTD not really being about time management, but something else.
Yeah, you can't manage time. So time management itself as a concept is a hoax. You don't mismanage 5 minutes and come up with 6 or 4.5. 5 minutes is. You usually think you need time management when, to your point, when you feel like you're not focused maybe as you think you should be, or not getting things done like you think you should be, or somehow your world is not as in control as you think it should be. Again, because you can't manage time, I make a little bit of a joke about it over all these years. I say usually executives call it time management because it's a little embarrassing to pay executives what you pay them and have them admit that they need help in managing themselves. So they call it time management because I'm so important, I need to manage my time. Yeah, you're so important, you also need to manage yourself. But that's a little hard for people to swallow. So they call it time management. Okay, and I understand what they are getting at. And usually what people are getting at is I don't have the right focus. I don't have the right amount of control in my life. And as you guys know, those are the two real elements of productivity, is having your life stable enough and under control, and not like don't try to control the weather or your boss or your kids. You can't do that. It's really about having something under control, like your car or a meeting or your desk or your head. Under control enough so that you're then able to focus. Control and focus sit very close together. So I don't know if you have another slide about that, Ali, but I'm happy to talk about that later. But it really is just about attention, about where do you put your focus, and do you feel comfortable about that?
Yeah. And one of this reframe of looking at GTD beyond time management is, when you look at time management, it just limits your options in terms of how you organize your work, because then your only option is, hey, look at my calendar, look at my journal, and how do I slice and dice it to fit my commitments. But if it's beyond time management, if it's about really your attention, then it opens up the freedom to, hey, let me just empty my head of what has my attention. Let me get clear, what is it and where do I put it? And then look at it. And then you really get that feeling, wow, this is so much more.
And another way to frame it is, and it's worth repeating if we decide to do that, is that I ask the question, how much time does it take to have a good idea? 0. How much time does it take to be creative? 0. How much time does it take to be strategic or innovative? 0. How much time does it take to be loving and present, with whatever you're doing? 0. And yet most people would say that's probably what they're after, is being strategic, being creative, being innovative, being loving, and being present. But those don't require time. They require room. Yeah. And room in the head, that's why your attention, if your attention is being distracted by other things, you don't have the room to have good ideas or be creative or be innovative or be present. Yeah. So that's why this is so much more than what people think of as time management.
Yeah.
David, I have a follow-on question. Why, if I don't know, it's when we lose focus and perspective, it's when we're really cluttered, the default behavior or experience that we get is the burning need for more time. And yet once we have clutter cleared and we've got the focus and perspective, we have the experience that, oh my, I've got stuff done and I have a lot of time in my hands. Any idea why that happens? Why is it that when I'm just overwhelmed, I say, I just need more time. I just need 2 more hours in a day. And the reverse also happens?
My answer to that would be when you're in flow, when you're in your zone, time disappears. There is no time. You only think you need more time if you're out of flow. If you're present, the issue doesn't show up. You know, it's like most people's questions about getting things done in GTD once they start to implement it is usually that they are asking questions because they're not doing a weekly review. I can tell just by the nature of their question. If they were, that is, if they, you know, follow along with that best practice of lifting up and seeing all the levels of their commitments on some consistent basis and making sure that map is current and complete, then they don't have those kinds of questions called, I need more time. You can't create any more time. You just want to make sure that what you're doing is what you ought to be doing given all your options. But most people have a sense that there's a whole lot more options that they're just not aware of. That's true. And so they're just being driven by latest and loudest, and that will be what causes them to think I need more time. Because I'm being driven by other things and I think I should use more time to do what? That would be the executive question to ask. More time to do what? And if they don't have the good answer to that, more time's not going to help at all anyway.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah, and this brings me to actually a great segue to the next one. In some ways, we already did talk about this. Getting things done is not just about getting things done, right? It's really about being fully present with what you're doing. And this was a really big one for me because I think when I entered into GTD, it started with being overwhelmed. And then once I got my system in place, like, wow, I can do so much more. So let me just do more and more and let me just get things done because isn't this what it's all about? And that soon led me to some burnout. And I realized, you know, I'm missing something here. And the more I engage with the practice and hearing David talk, I realized, you know what, it's the idea of those lists are not about doing everything from it, but really making choices. And then once you make the right choice and you have all your commitments clarified, it's really about being fully present with what you're doing. David, any thoughts you'd like to add here?
No, I think that says it pretty well. It is a syndrome. You bring up a syndrome that if you've got some longtime GTD, hard-nosed practitioners there listening in on this, it is a syndrome that's fairly common with really successfully implementing GTD. Just like you will start to get so excited about it. That's wow, there's so many things I can do. And you keep throwing more and more things into your own in-basket. You have more and more ideas, and then you can truly overwhelm yourself. I've had people do that in 3 weeks. Most people takes 2 years and they get to that point, but there usually is a point like that where you start to go, wait a minute. See, ultimately it's about, in my experience, our life is really about completion. People say, well, yeah, but what about purpose and vision? Yeah, complete that. Yeah, it's all about, we're here to manifest, to express, to experience, and usually towards something. We're teleological beings. So there is a lot of getting things done. So in order to get present, sometimes you need to get things done. Sometimes in order to be present, you actually need to go fix the light so that it's off your mind, so that you're not distracted by it. Or at least put fix light bulb on your errands list or on your at-home to-do list. Then you can relax. So it's really about making sure that you get all that stuff off your mind and there's an inverse relationship between on your mind and getting done. Usually when things are on your mind, it's because they're hung up. You haven't made decisions about it, or you haven't parked the right triggers in the right kind of a system that the right person will see at the right time. So you can be buried and have nothing on your mind. That's pretty much been my life for 35 years. Maybe that's evident, but it's not much going on upstairs here. You actually have to use your mind to get your mind empty. So you don't just get present by breathing. It helps. There are a lot of the mindfulness techniques that can help you get more present, but if you still need cat food, focusing on your breathing is not going to get cat food. Yeah. Sorry. There are a lot of great techniques that can help you be more present for sure, but GTD is a prime one.
Yeah. So now my next slide is, well, in some ways counterintuitive to this slide or what we just discussed. And let me just go ahead because it comes straight from David's quote. Yeah, GTD is not about doing everything on your list. It's about feeling good about the things that you're not doing. Yeah, it's as much as it's about doing things, it's also so much about being okay with the things that you're not doing. For me, the realization was I'm never going to be completing everything on my list. Initially, it was, oh, I got this list and I get stressed. I got all these things and I got to get through all of them as fast as possible. But then, no, it's really not about that. The whole purpose of the list was to make choices. And when you make a choice that this is what I'm going to be doing and saying no to the others, you can feel good about that no because it's outside your mind in a system that you trust, and feel good about what you're saying yes to. So this, feeling good about saying no is, I think, one of these great benefits of GTD. David, I think you're on mute.
Everybody's saying no all the time because of all the things they're not doing right now. I don't know how many people we've got. 97 people on this. Multiply, let's say 100 people, even if everybody only has 30 or 40 projects. So that's 4,000, 100 times 40. What's that? Yeah, that's 4,000 projects are not getting done right now. Oh my God, the world is going to fall apart. Oh my gosh. And it comes back to what I discovered years ago. A lot of my early training in the sort of self-development world had a lot to do with agreements. The price you pay when you don't keep an agreement and the rewards you get when you keep an agreement. And a whole lot of this is about managing your agreements with yourself. And the reason, as you guys know, when somebody does a mind sweep, they write down all their stuff, they usually feel two things, grief and relief, right? The grief comes from, oh my God, look at all this stuff I'm not doing. And you're looking at a lot of agreements you haven't kept. The relief comes from looking at all that stuff and going, no, I can't do all those right now. Here's the one thing out of all those I'm going to do. And what you just did was renegotiate the agreement. See, if you don't want to have broken agreements, there's three things you could do. One is don't make the agreement. No, or make it someday maybe or whatever. The other one is go complete the agreement. Light bulb, have I got the bulb? Let me just go do it. So complete that agreement. And the other one is write it on a list and say, not right now. I've got other things to do. And that's then renegotiating that agreement. But the problem is when people are using their head as their office, and your head's just a crappy office, when they're keeping stuff in there, that place doesn't seem to have any sense of past or future. That means that everything you stick just in your head thinks it should be being done right now. That's why you get waked up at 3 o'clock in the morning by stuff you can't do anything about, because your mind doesn't have one. If your mind had a mind, it would only remind you of stuff when you could do something about it. So you have to get smarter than your mind. So you guys have heard of emotional intelligence. This is mental intelligence. See, if any of you have ever changed your mind, who did that? You are not your mind, right? Your mind is actually stupid, again, in that way. So learning that it's subtle stuff, but it is just mechanical once you get this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I really resonated, especially with how GT is really all about managing your agreements. And yeah, when we have stuff in our head, we just don't have the perspective to see those agreements and manage them. The moment it's out of our head, we just realize, oh my God, we've committed to so much. Great. Now that we've committed to so much, at least now we have a way to engage with it and do something about it rather than just leaving it in our head.
Something else, Mohammed Ali, that I've really been reminded of, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly, is that when you have even just one thing that you're feeling out of control about or not focused on, it colors your whole life. It makes your whole life feel out of control. So that's why there's a big difference between 95% doing GTD and 100% doing it. Because even if there's something missing, you still got that feeling, wait a minute, there's still something missing. There's something I probably would, could, should be doing, but I just don't remember what it is. Oh, damn. And so especially if the things that have your attention are particularly strategic or important. Now with the pandemic going on, I'm sure there's a lot of that going on for people. It's like, oh my God, if even getting your home office or starting to work from home is not under control, or your kids are not under control, given that they have to stay home or do whatever they have to do, and that's different, it makes your whole life feel out of control. So starting to identify what those things are that are pulling on you and then being able to appropriately engage with them. So appropriate engagement is the big key.
The next quote is actually one of my favorites in this series. GTD is not about doing things early. It's about doing things just in time. And this whole idea of just in time, I think, really became popular in the manufacturing field. But, as knowledge workers, I think it applies to us equally or even more. And when I got into GTD, I was always under the impression, okay, I have this new superpower. So I'm going to do everything as fast as possible, as quick as possible, so that when I'm close to the deadline, I don't have to stress about it. But then I realized I see people around me not doing things upfront. They let things go, and there's a right moment to do it. And when it's done, then that kind of has the maximum impact. So then I realized, wait a minute, there's something not right over here. And then I realized the whole GTD system was actually designed not really to do things up front. It's really about giving yourself choices and options so that you can do the thing that gives you maximum impact in that moment, to the context that we create and the list that we have. And it changed the way I looked at procrastination. I always looked at procrastination as this big bad thing and that we should never procrastinate and it's a bad thing. So do things as early as possible. But then I started valuing the need for actually procrastinating, because there's a right time to do something. And then the question comes, how do you design your system so that you have the option to choose the right thing at the right time? And that shift really changed how I started engaging with my list. Yeah. David, any thoughts on this one?
You're on mute.
Yes.
As a holacracy principle, avoid decisions until the last responsible moment. And that's a pregnant statement, the last responsible moment. In other words, don't make a decision because it might be premature, especially in a business context. Sometimes you want to wait as long as possible to see what the competition is doing, to see what's going on in the world before you maybe do a launch, or before you start a new thing, or before you pull the trigger on something. And I found that extremely useful advice. And to your point, it doesn't mean necessarily slow down, though sometimes you'll speed up by slowing down because it'll make you smarter and you'll have a greater perspective, on what you're doing, and you won't be so much driven like a rat in a cage. And the busy trap is very seductive. So learning to stop, step back, take a breath, and to your point, actually avoid doing things that don't seem to be present in the moment to do. In a way, the strange admonition in terms of how do I set priorities, I do what I feel like doing. I know that sounds, I don't know how that sounds. I just do what I feel like doing. Now, sometimes what I feel like doing is something that's tough to do, just because eat the frog or whatever the thing is. Okay, sometimes I get up and I handle the ugliest email first. The one that I have to think about, and I'm like, sometimes I want to get that done because that's then the just thing. That's the thing I need to do to get my attention back. And sometimes I just do what's fun, simply because it gets my energy going, it gets me rolling. So I've run across two very sophisticated people. One guy, a guy named Tony Schwartz. Some of you know Tony's work. And he's the one that basically said, do the toughest thing first. And then you can snack on the email or surf the web the rest of the day as a reward. And Joss Whedon, who's one of the most successful movie producers in Hollywood, became a big champion of my stuff. And his point of view is he does what's fun. He said, I like to just look at what's the most fun thing to do, because that gets him on a roll and he gets a lot of stuff done just by following what's fun. I do both. So, sometimes I do what's fun, sometimes I do the hardest. And sometimes I just shoot down the middle. But again, the point is to your point, it's about feeling good about the choices about what you do.
Yeah.
And you can only do one at a time anyway.
Yeah. And
David, there's a question. If we just quickly recap, you mentioned Tony Schwartz and another name.
Joss Whedon. He created Buffy the Vampire. He created the Avengers. He created some of the most successful Hollywood films in terms of making money.
All right. Okay. The next one is, I heard this the first time in David's TED Talk, and many of you would have watched that. But in case not, here's a quote. GTD is not about not being messy. So there are two negatives there. So it's not about not being messy. it's about giving you the freedom to make a mess. And yet, when we approach this world of productivity and world of being more organized, there's this image that comes, oh, you need to have a clean desk at all times, and you see these beautiful pictures and everything really organized in there, you know, right where they need to be. And a lot of people, when they look at that, a lot of creative, productive people who are actually getting things done, sometimes that stresses them out because they really need that mess around to get things done. So there is a subtle balance over here where GTD is not about not having a mess, right? It's about having the freedom to make a mess, having a system that you can get back to and then make a mess and then get back to clean and clear again. Yeah. David, what were your thoughts when you came up with this insight?
I think it was in response to a lot of the people that like to think of themselves as the creative, spontaneous types, think that this is too much structure. To that point, how much is it too structured to get something out of your head? Is it too structured to decide what exactly you're going to do about what you just got out of your head? Is it too structured to put reminders someplace that you trust you'll see? You don't have to go find something, because you can't find it. Is it too structured to then review and reflect on the nature of your commitment so you're making trusted choices about what you do? How too structured is that? And the truth is, you actually go through that process as soon as you do anything productive out there. So I like to use the kitchen example, and to the point is that I like the freedom. I don't cook neat. Ask my wife, but I need to start neat so I have the freedom to then make a mess. That's why the French chefs have the saying, mise en place. Everything had better be in the place, because when the bell rings and dinner is on, it's going to get crazy. I know I've been in the restaurant business before and been a waiter before and been a cook before and so forth. And when you're not doing anything else, you're cleaning up because there's a mess you need to make quickly. And you need the freedom to do that. But again, if you're in a mess, you can't make one.
Yeah. This was a really big one for me as well when I heard it the first time. And it made me feel less guilty when I'm in a mess, because I'm like, oh, you know what? It's not really about not being in a mess. It's about, do I have the freedom to come out of it and get back to clear and current so that I have the freedom to make one? Yeah, cool. That's the next one. Yeah. GTD is not doing more hard work. It's not about really stressing yourself and being busy, like the busy trap David talked about. It's about doing the right thing at the right time. And yeah, this can come as a real relief to a lot of people who feel, oh, I'm not productive. Does that mean I need to be working harder now if I want to do GTD? Is it going to make me more busier? Is it going to make me more, does it mean more long hours at work? Does it mean more projects? But really, it's really not about that, right? It's really about designing your systems. And in the way, design is the right word, because you need to customize it for your own needs, so that when the most critical, most important, or rather most meaningful or the most fun thing to do is clear to you at the right time. So moment to moment, you're really making the right choices. When you're with family, you're there with family. That's the right thing to do, to give them your full loving attention. And when you're at work, when you're meeting, or when you're with a client, you want to then give your most valued attention and be with them to serve them. Yeah, it's really about that. And I think those who are afraid to enter this world of productivity thinking that they're going to be more busier, no, it's really about designing your systems to actually have more fun. David, any thoughts?
It doesn't mean that you're not going to have to do tough stuff from time to time. I do too. And if you weren't challenged, you wouldn't grow or express or expand yourself. So challenge is not something you want to get rid of. You want to appropriately engage with that challenge. And you mentioned the word fear. The greatest human fear is the fear of being out of control. People are killing themselves and each other right now just to maintain or achieve a sense of psychological control. It's that powerful a driver, in terms of particularly negative human experience. And for all of us, the prime reason that we procrastinate is you don't want to engage with something you don't feel like you can control right away. The thing you'll probably avoid more than anything is telling somebody you love something you need to tell them, and you're afraid about how you're going to feel, about how they're going to feel when you tell them something you got to tell them. That's not easy. But what you're afraid of is you're afraid of the potential emotional reactions, responses, and results from doing that behavior. But it's, again, that's fear of the future. If you could just stay present, okay, what do I need to do now? What do I need to say now? How do I do that? And for a lot of people, it's very difficult for them to be physically affectionate with their kids. Again, this doesn't make those easy, but it does, back to your original point when you started this, the frame of mind that says, okay, what do I need to do first and next that's going to resolve, handle, complete, or clarify this tough situation that I'm in? And then it's one step at a time, because the steps themselves are usually not that hard. It's our fear of what might happen. I didn't wake up this morning. I doubt if any of you woke up this morning and say, I can't wait to go be an incompetent jerk today. No, I think that's something to reflect on if there is something that you're either avoiding or you're finding particularly challenging.
I was reminded of this quote. I heard this quote from Dr. Jordan Peterson recently, quite GTD-esque. He said, man is a beast of burden. We're all beasts of burden. Meaning is we won't be happy until we have a burden to carry. It's when you have no burden that's the person with no burden is the most miserable, or you're carrying the wrong burden. So recognize that. I'm not quoting it directly, but I love the framing of it. And like you said, it's not to get rid of the hard stuff, but are you dealing with the right hard stuff at the right time? Are you doing the right time that you're most appropriately engaged?
All right, cool. Thank you for sharing that. All right, the next one. GTD is not about setting priorities. It's about getting clarity what your priorities are. And yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges I often hear from participants and coaching clients are, I have all these things to do, but I do not know how do I prioritize? How do I give me a system so that I can really know what to focus on? And interestingly, in GTD, we actually don't give them a system to directly prioritize. What we really do is really give them clarity about what's important to them at the different horizons of commitments. And they intuitively know then what is the action I need to take in and what is most important to them in that moment. And the more I practice GTD, the more I teach GTD. Another thing I realized, GTD is really a lot about clarity. It doesn't, if there's one thing that really delivers on, its clarity. And the rest is just an emergence out of that. Productivity, getting to your goals, making priority decisions, managing your agreements well, etc. It all starts with getting clarity, and then the rest is all like bonus from that. David, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's, to your point, being aware of why am I on the planet, what's my vision of success career-wise and lifestyle-wise, what are the things I need to accomplish over the next 3 to 24 months to make the vision happen. Those are horizons 3, 4, and 5. And then you have all the things you need to maintain so you can get there, like your health and vitality and your finances and your relationships and your technology and all that stuff. And then you have all the things you need to do about all those things, all the projects you've got. And again, most people, as you know, have 30 to 80 of those usually. And then you have all the actions you need to take about all the moving parts on any of those things. So there's quite a menu of that. Interestingly, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've had the good fortune to engage with some billionaires, very successful people who fell in love with GTD and the idea of it. And interestingly for them, they had a good bit of clarity on their vision and purpose and values. What they didn't have was they would wake up with $1 million ideas, but not know what to do with them or who to give them to or how to track it if they gave it to them. And so for them, the most strategic thing happened to be on the lower rungs of the horizon, the action level and the project level, because that's where so much of the activity actually goes on that we're aware of. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't focus on the higher horizons, but many times you shouldn't. You need to clean your room instead of think about where you want to be 5 years from now. A lot of people, if your day-to-day is feeling out of control, don't even try to think about anything past that, because you're just going to create guilt and frustration. So again, you have to, the real, I think, expertise, GTD expertise would be reflected by your ability to shift horizons moment to moment. I had a very senior guy in one of the big consulting firms tell me that one of the coolest things about it, and he had quite a spiritual focus himself as well, was that in one moment he'd be dealing with the staff person down at on the runway level, and the next moment he'd be dealing with somebody in terms of their core values. And he said the ability to be able to shift gears that fast and not take one thing to the next, and to be able to be clear and present at whatever level and at whatever horizon he was putting his attention, he'd love that. And that to him was a lot of what the elegance of GTD really was, to create the ability to navigate those. If you can't do things on paper, you can't do things on a computer either. You can't, you need the freedom to be able to use whatever tool is around and do that, and don't get hung up on the system or the structure. So again, a lot of ways to spin this one.
Yeah, and I particularly like the point of having that ability and capacity to really move between horizons moment to moment. Thank you.
If you ever saw a martial artist fight 4 people at once, do they fight 4 people at once? No, they don't. One at a time. Just real quick refocus, and not dragging one thing to the next. That's why a lot of the training in the higher levels of martial arts has a lot to do with being present. How do you get clear? It certainly was my experience and the training I got when I got a black belt years ago in my 20s.
All right. So the next one, GTD is not about creating a perfect plan. It's about having the speed to maneuver to seize opportunities. Yeah, I this is something I learned the hard way. I don't know where I got this from, but I always felt, okay, if I need to achieve a goal, I need to really have a good plan. And without a good plan, I won't be able to get there. And it's about sticking to that plan to ensure that, okay, I'm going to get to my goals. Especially in the world that we're living today, it's just changing so fast. It's, there's a time you could reasonably say, okay, what's going to happen a few years from now? But now, even maybe a year or 6 months from now, sometimes it's difficult to predict what's going to happen, especially 2020. I mean, that's been like crazy. And really the beauty about GTD, it's not about creating these perfect plans. Because sometimes we get that impression because it's about productivity. But no, really it's about the speed to maneuver to seize opportunities. And I think a lot of that came up in the last slide. It's about how fast can you move moment to moment between horizons or between surprises that come up. So yeah, that's what you get, that capacity to move fast when you are implementing a system like GTD.
By the way, to that point, Mohammed, I get a lot of questions about what's changed from the first edition of Getting Things Done in 2001 to the second edition in 2015. And the methodology didn't change at all. What changed was the population and the need of a much larger group in the population to be able to do what you just said, that ability to deal with surprise, to deal with change and whatever. And they also I'm often asked, how has the digital world changed all of this? And basically the digital world hasn't done anything except speed things up and add volume. But there hasn't been much, frankly. Yeah, the internet was cool. And frankly, not much really game-changing digitally has happened since the word processor and the spreadsheet. Those were game changers. Those changed how I thought. Those changed how we ran our businesses. Those changed all kinds of stuff. And there hadn't been that much. Relational databases, but that's just another version of spreadsheets. They also had made a big difference out there. But otherwise, it's just speed and volume has increased tremendously. There are just so many more things, so many more channels, and so much more data coming at you in terms of those options in those channels. And that's why, to your point, the ability to maneuver fast. If you're getting 300 emails a day, you don't have time to open it and close it. You need to deal with it. And that's why I call GTD a martial art. And it's martial. Cooking is an art. Ballet is an art. Painting is an art, for sure. The reason martial comes into play is because you're dealing with things coming at you. You're dealing with a lot of things. And that's probably true if you're a concert pianist or if you're a ballerina. It's probably true of that in the most subtle ways, that's still a martial art as well. But the martial is really dealing with, oh my gosh, what's coming at me right now? And that coming at me could also be from the inside. How many ideas did I wake up with this morning? What am I going to do with those? Oh my gosh. I need to have to fight yourself.
Yeah.
In terms of overcommitting or all that other stuff. And so constantly having to make decisions about where do I put my focus, and to be able to then do that in a relaxed way. It's martial art.
Yeah. And such a valuable skill in today's world. Deal with surprises also in a relaxed way. Okay, cool. I want to move to Q&A. I see a lot of great questions coming up in the chat. Can I ask Arif if you can maybe prioritize and maybe pick up questions from the chat, and then we can use it?
Sure. I think let's give chance, if we can, for folks to ask questions themselves. It's a nice opportunity for them to interact with David. So Shrikant can go first. After that, Shaheen. The others, just raise your hands and I'll take them one at a time. So under the chat, click on the raise hand button in Zoom and I'll start picking you up. But meanwhile, Shrikant, you've been wanting to ask a question for a while. Go ahead.
Sure. Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead, Shrikant.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for this great opportunity to interact with David. David, I have a question. Basically, for a leader, there are two types of work. One is doing the task management, what I call as a manage work, and second is a create work, where you have to basically apply your creativity and actually create some work to do that. Now, GTD is a great tool for the manage work. I understand that. How do you find GTD can be used for the creative work or the create work, where you don't want to manage any task, but you want to really sit down and you want to create some creative work on this?
That's a good question. And I don't know that I have a really expert answer on that, because there's so many techniques you can use to help us spin creative thinking. De Bono's work, a lot of people that spend a lot more time studying how do you get creative thoughts and how do you trigger those. To me, I think the real key is externalizing your thinking is going to be the best way to access your creativity. That's why brainstorming, that's why mind maps, that's why going up to a whiteboard or just a pen and paper, being able to externalize whatever your thinking is, at least with me, and it automatically triggers more creative thinking. If all I have to do is boot my word processor and start writing a blog or an article or whatever, and I come up with all kinds of things I didn't know I knew, it becomes just a creative process in and of itself, just expressing it. What you don't want to do is just constipate your expression. So GTD helps by clearing the deck so that you've got a nice clear space, but then using that clear space to then externalize your thinking, write it down. But, when I first started doing public seminars, I had a woman who came up to me in a public seminar. She said, David, do you know what it is you're teaching? I said, what is it I'm teaching? She said, distributed cognition. I said, you mean write it down? She said, that's another way to say it. So,
Yeah, right.
And she held up, I held up a pen. I said, what's that? She said, it's cognitive artifact. So I laughed at all that, but the truth is it actually was at the very beginning of quite a bit of new cognitive science research that was done about how the mind works and how you get creative thinking and how to be able to do that. So distributed cognition, I'll get it out of your head. And because if you keep stuff in your head, keeps wanting to hang on to it and it doesn't leave space for the next idea. That's why writing stuff down. That's why I over capture, because if I don't, if some part of me says that might be a cool idea and I leave it in my head, there's a part of me that says, don't forget, David, don't forget, David, don't forget, David. And it's just taking up real estate that it shouldn't. So that's why it helps to write stuff down, even if you throw all of it away or 95% of it away. That's why if you're writing stuff, the best technique is write a crappy first draft, because editing is really a lot of where the creativity comes in, and any and all of that. So that's a long non-answer to your question. That's my best shot. Anyway.
Thank you.
No, yeah, thank you so much, David. That was not a non-answer. I think that was a terrific answer. The little time spent with David, I to really get the value of David is the question that you ask, and you get amazing things from David that you haven't heard before. And yes, just externalize how to do creative work, externalize your thoughts, put it down, and from there the creativity will flow. Thank you so much, David. Shaheen, you want to mute yourself and go ahead?
Thank you. David, like all of us on the call, huge fan. So super excited to be doing this. Can you talk a little bit more about contexts in 2020 when we spend 10 hours a day sitting in front of one computer? Is it a mindset? Is it where you do the work? And I know Ali and Arif have weighed in on this. Is it a list of apps? Is it a list of energy levels? I'm just curious as to what your views on context are as the world's evolved a bit.
I don't know that I have any views other than whatever seems to be comfortable, wherever you need to be doing whatever it is you need to do. It's always a good idea to make sure that you don't get too stale in terms of whatever you're doing. Don't sit too long. And about 90 minutes is about all that you can focus on really good cognitive work before you need a break. Otherwise, you start to lose horsepower. So a lot of those things are just simply about how do I manage my energy. You might be a morning person. You might be a nighttime person. You might be a midday person. None of those are all of those. So again, what do you feel like doing? Now, sometimes you don't have a lot of choices about that. And so you just need to then manage that as best you can. But that's all I'd say. Environment really is important, especially with a lot of people now then having to change from going to an office to actually doing most of their work at home. That, ideally they made that a project called Set Up My Home Office and make it really good so that when you sit down in that space, it automatically gets you to do thinking. You need to be doing the weekly review in the same place, maybe listening to the same kind of music. It'll automatically trigger that kind of thinking. I have Spotify, and I have a playlist of work classical music. And it's the classic, like a lot of Vivaldi, some of the nicer Bach stuff. And when I put that on in background for me, I can't help it. I automatically move more into executive thinking. So learning to be creative with how you create context. I also don't do creative writing at my desk. I take my laptop. One of the reasons I got rid of my big screen, I had a Thunderbolt screen, and I got a Mac with a 16-inch Mac because I wanted to be able to just take the same machine and move it around into different contexts. So if I'm doing creative writing, I move to my kind of easy chair in the living room because that's easier for me to, in the context, to give myself the space to do creative writing. If I'm sitting at my desk like I am right now, I've got work stuff around me and it sort of gets me into work modality. Maybe that's just being conscious maybe about your environment. And some people are more highly visual than others. Some people like the music. Some people, music is a distraction. So that's quite personal, I think, in terms of your own style.
Got you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, David, again. Mihir, if you can go ahead, unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Mihir here. Can you see me?
Yep.
Yeah, my question is, we are having weekly meetings, weekly reviews. So if I'm handling a team, I have to review what all the things which they are also doing. Sometimes it can get overwhelming if they are using a GTD way of managing their tasks. Then I cannot, if tasks are just work related, I cannot look into, okay, who is the every next action. So like, how do you do it? Like when you're managing big teams, how do you really do your weekly review with them, and how do you manage?
Managing teams is the same as managing yourself. What's got the team's attention, right? And whatever has the team's attention. By the way, what has the team's attention is all driven by the purpose of the team. You don't even have a team unless you have a purpose to have one. So what's the purpose of the team? So just understanding what that is, that then drives, okay, now because we have this purpose as a team, here are the things that have our attention right now as a team. And by the way, your team could be your married partner or family. Okay, what has the team's attention? So that's step one. It's the capture step, right? And then you clarify, hey, okay, what is that? What does that mean? What is it? And that's then defining not necessarily next actions, but certainly defining outcomes that the team needs to get there. Projects, if you will. And so identifying the projects. Once you identify the projects, then ideally somebody needs to own each project. You need to clarify who's got that. And then they have to figure out themselves probably what the next action is. So not necessarily in the team meeting, that might be too granular for the team to deal with. The team has now decided, hey, brief, that's yours. Take it and run with it. We'd like to, when you think you can get back to us on that. And then you need to keep track of those things. So you need to keep track of the outcomes. So whoever owns the team, and somebody's got to be the owner of whatever the team's purpose is. And once they do that, then they're the ones who have to figure out, okay, so what level of granularity do we need to clarify? What kind of accountability do we get? How often should we then review what? And that sometimes you need stand-up meetings daily. Depends on what's going on. Sometimes a weekly meeting is not needed. Sometimes, hey, let's hold off. A lot of times people go to meetings because the cow in front of them, we have a Monday meeting. Come on. It's like, why? So being real clear and be conscious about what's the purpose of us getting together. And as a team, then deciding how much do you need to see, how often to feel comfortable. What does the team need to do to get itself clear? In other words, get everything off the team's mind. What do you need to do? You need to appropriately engage in everything the team's committed to complete in all of its accountabilities. Now, that's a lot said, but that's how I deal with teams.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing with us these insights. It had been on my mind for a while to call David and discuss with him all these insights that were coming up. So I'm glad that it got done. A big project on my end I can check off. Thank you, David. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, thanks everybody for playing. And again, our mission is to create a world where there are no problems, only projects. So the more any of you can spread that word and spread that behavior and practice, yay, the world will be a better place.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.